Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 70, Don't Be Ridiculous podcast, coming back at you a couple days later. Just want to, put in our reactions to the conference championship games. And we have two teams in the Super Bowl now. So, before we, just want to remind everybody, make sure you like, subscribe, say hello, comment, let us know what you think. And, so it's going to be the Chiefs and the Eagles for Super Bowl. I think it's 57 now.
Yeah.
Seems weird to say, but, it's one of those things. I mean, I think it's a lot of people would have picked the Chiefs at the beginning of the season. I don't think a lot of people would have picked the Eagles to make the Super Bowl. So that's kind of interesting. I think it's interesting from the standpoint of these are two teams that are built in a different way. The Kansas City Chiefs have got the, superstar quarterback they're paying a lot of money to, and they're trying to build around that. And the Eagles have just kind of built up this roster and then inserted the coach and the quarterback and, have made it into the Super Bowl. So yeah. I'm looking forward to the matchup. Hopefully it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, hopefully. Usually we get it. I mean, I think either way it'll be a close game, but hopefully it'll be entertaining.
Yeah. So let's talk about the games yesterday. I mean, we're going to spend the majority of the time talking about the Chiefs and Bengals because I think you can take a lot of things from that game.
I mean, God, the NFC Championship game was awful. I find it, I mean, we talked about this the last time, but I just found it hilarious that all these people are like, oh, well, San Francisco's going to win. And I'm like, they have a third string quarterback who's a seventh round draft pick who's played like 7 games. Like, what are you talking about? It's just one of those things. And I don't know that I necessarily heard this, but I mean, I feel like some people are like, oh, well, they lost their quarterback at the beginning of the game. So it would have ended up differently if they didn't get hurt? Like, really? Like, I don't know. Were you watching that? I just didn't really, it didn't look like San Francisco had a shot in that game.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, basically Ryan Russillo said the game was over with 7 minutes to go in the first quarter. And honestly, once it got to into the second half, I mean, that wasn't really a football game anymore. That was just... that was something else. So, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But first of all, I mean, the obviously the better game, the Chiefs Bengals, Burrow versus Mahomes. And I gotta say, I think the game delivered. I mean, the game looked the way that I thought it would look. I thought, obviously the Bengals have got injuries up front, and so they would struggle with pass protection, but they did. But they still made enough plays to where they were in position to win the game. I thought the Chiefs would probably get the lead and struggle in the second half, and they did. I think that I think Patrick Mahomes, I thought that he would be affected by the ankle, and he was. You could if you've watched Patrick Mahomes at all, you could clearly tell there was an issue. It affected his mobility for sure. And other than the last play where he ran, it was pretty much, his mobility was really limited in that game, which is kind of what I thought was going to happen. I thought, these two teams are evenly matched. They both have really good quarterbacks. I think the Bengals defense is a little better than the Chiefs defense. And, both teams had chances to win the game, and it just came down to who made a couple more plays, and the Chiefs did. And you got to give them credit for that. I don't like the whole conversation today about who's the better quarterback. I mean, I don't really care about those things, so I find that interesting. It doesn't really matter to me. Colin Cowherd saying Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback ever today, or best quarterback talent ever. I mean, I don't know. I'm not making assessments like that off of that game. But I think that, I think the Chiefs, like I said, the Chiefs made it happen when they needed to, and that's all you can ask from that team. And they're 5 straight AFC Championship games. They're in there for a reason because they're really good, but also the Bengals are really good.
Yeah, and I'll get to the game, but one of the things I just found really annoying. So I'm watching clips of First Things First with Nick Wright and Chris Broussard and Kevin Wildes, And, Nick's ripping Joe Burrow because he's been bad in some of the fourth quarters in the playoffs, and he's like, well, he didn't really play that well in the game. And I'm just like, timeout. Okay. Look, I understand that he threw 2 interceptions. Was it his best game ever? No. Okay. But sometimes there are games, often playoff games, when things are really tight, where, the losing quarterback, if as you're watching the game, you feel like, okay, this guy's maybe struggling a little bit. Some of it's not his fault because they're not running the ball that well, and the protection up front is not very good. Okay. He's also playing a really good team. And also, they were criticizing some of the decisions for him to throw downfield on, like, 3rd down. And I'm like, I notice you're not criticizing when he threw down the field on 4th and 5 to keep that drive going and they ended up getting a touchdown. I notice you're not criticizing that. To me, this was a game where Joe Burrow is trying to will his team to victory, and he's trying to make plays. So some of those interceptions, I'm sorry, I feel like he's just like, you know what? I got to try to make something happen. I got to get this down the field. One of them, if he had thrown a little farther, it might have been a touchdown. I think there was one, it was double covered and it was kind of batted around or something. If he threw it a little farther, maybe it's not an interception, or maybe the guy catches it. So, and by the way, you're saying he was terrible. He had the ball in his hands with a chance to go win the game. Okay? And then, the end of the game, the offensive line failed him, which of course it did because they had so many injuries. Okay? So just that, first of all, is just really annoying me. By the way, is Mahomes the best quarterback in the league? Yes. Duh. Who doesn't think that? Anyone who doesn't think that is a moron. So if your argument is, I have to prove that Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league, it's a straw man because it's ridiculous. Of course he is. Is Joe Burrow better than him? No, of course he's not. Is Joe Burrow great? Yes, of course he is. I'm sorry, just some of this stuff was really frustrating to me. And the game itself, like you said, it delivered. Okay, it was good. It was entertaining. There were big plays. And then I find this, it's one of the things that just endlessly fascinating or just annoying about sports. When you win the game, we forget. We have blind spots in our memory about a variety of things. Patrick Mahomes had a terrible fumble late in that game, okay, which allowed the Bengals to go down the field and score. That was terrible. And if the Chiefs had lost that game, they'd be talking about that. I'm not going to go on and on and on about it. Because he made a bunch of plays and they ended up winning the game. And by the way, kudos to him because he's playing on basically one leg. The other thing I wanted to point out, which I was pointing out to you, I think I was texting you, Colin Cowherd's like, well, I told you the ankle injury wasn't going to be that big of a deal. And then he's also saying Mahomes is playing on one leg. Well, which is it? The injury's not a big deal, or he's playing on one leg? You can't have it both ways, okay? I do think he was playing on one leg. It was pretty obvious that it affected him throughout the game. And like I said, kudos to him. He's unbelievable. He's awesome, okay? He beat him on one freaking leg, okay? So, yeah.
Yeah, if Joe Burrow goes down the field, and by the way, I totally agree with you. And that last drive by Mahomes was not a game-winning drive. That was a punt return and a penalty. That's what he did on that drive. Don't give me this nonsense that he engineered a game-winning drive. Let's tell the truth. That's not what happened. Okay? So, yeah, I totally agree with you. And Dan Patrick was pointing this out to Nick Wright when he had him on his show last week. Mahomes hasn't been good in the Super Bowl. He hasn't.
Yeah.
He's been there twice. Once he was bad. Okay? The other game he didn't do anything for 3 quarters and pulled it out of his ass at the end. Okay? He wasn't good against Cincinnati in the second half last year. Okay? I don't think, like, everybody's going out, he wasn't great last night. He was solid. He was good. He made the plays that they needed to make. But by no means was that a fantastic game for Patrick Mahomes. And part of it was because he was limited because of his mobility, because of the ankle. It was clear. Anytime the Bengals got any kind of rush on him at all, he was done. He wasn't going to go anywhere. He couldn't do anything with it. Why do you think, so I think that the Mahomes ankle and the Bengals offensive line being injured actually kind of evened the game out. So that way we got the game that we got. Patrick Mahomes is great. There's no disputing that. But acting like Patrick Mahomes is infallible, like today calling him the greatest quarterback ever, is ridiculous. Okay?
Yeah.
He's been to 5 AFC championship games. He's lost 2 of them. Okay? I realize they were in overtime, but he lost 2 of them. Last year they should have lost to Buffalo before they lost to Cincinnati anyway. Okay,
Right.
the game again, the Super Bowl against Tampa, they got their asses kicked, and Nick Wright's trying to tell me he was fantastic in that game. Like, what are you talking about?
He was good. I don't want to say he was bad. He was good. He made plays. You know, he also just he gutted it out because he had his ankle was obviously in pain and he was figuring out a way to deal with it, and he was missing throws too.
And this is why I think I give both quarterbacks a lot of credit. They had to fight through stuff to overcome it to play well in this game. And Burrow was not bad last night in the fourth quarter. They couldn't get it done on the last drive. If they get down there and get a field goal, what are we saying today? We're blaming the Chiefs defense for it? Like, you know, give me a break. Both these guys played well enough to win. Kansas City just made a few more plays.
And by the way, I think we'll on one of our longer podcasts, we'll talk about this. But this morning, I'm on my way to work. I'm listening to Two Pros and a Cup of Joe on Fox Sports Radio. And they're crapping all over Tony Romo, saying he's a terrible analyst and he's awful and he has a bunch of antics and he doesn't say anything interesting. And Greg Olson is so much better on Fox Sports, which, first of all, I find it funny that the people on the Fox Sports Radio Network are praising the guy on Fox, the TV network, and ripping the guy on CBS. But also, I just wanted to point out, I just wanted to just briefly mention this, and maybe in one of our longer podcasts, we'll go more in depth on this. What the hell's wrong with Tony Romo? What? I don't understand. I thought he's fine. You know, he was pointing out on some of those Patrick Mahomes throws. That's why I brought it up. Some of those Mahomes throws that were like short in the dirt. He's like, yeah, because he can't really step into it because of the ankle. Which they were criticizing it on the radio show. They're like, well, I don't think he's providing us anything that's educating us. Yes, he does. What are you talking about? Every time I watch Tony Romo, he's like, well, they're going to do this and this because of this. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. You know. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
It's simple. Like, we like the guy at first, and he's really high energy, but then it leads to, because we live in this social media world, it leads to criticism because of you. He's so good, I don't like him anymore. That's how that works.
Same thing with Chris Collinsworth.
You know,
people rip on Chris Collinsworth, and I'm just like, what is wrong with? He's great. What's wrong with Chris Collinsworth?
Well, anyway, we'll talk about that another time. Collinsworth drives me nuts because he's not telling the truth sometimes. It's only positive, and he never calls it out when it's happening. But anyway, so look, right. You know, my other thoughts on the game. Look, Mahomes figured it out like that. And by the way, that's what Joe Burrow was trying to do, and he almost did it. Like, you know, it's not like, this was agreed. One guy was good, one guy wasn't. Like, I thought both guys, under the circumstances, did as well as they could. This was not a game where you're going to drive the ball down the field. You know, this was a struggle.
The other thing was, so Eric Mangini was on First Things First, and he's saying, well, some of the sacks were on the offensive line, some of them were on Burrow, and I'm like, that's fine, but I mean, Burrow's trying to make stuff happen because it's on him. He's got to make stuff happen for them to score. So, it's hard for me to again, was it his best game ever? No, but I mean, he was good. Okay, what do you guys want? It's like, and I hate the reaction people have to interceptions, as if interceptions are the worst thing ever. And if you throw one interception, oh God, you're terrible. Dude, he's trying to make stuff happen. It's a tough game. He maybe made a couple bad throws. Like, fine, whatever. They almost won the game. So just
well, one of those interceptions last night was basically a punt. Like, that's basically it didn't cost them anything. It was basically a punt. And Matthew Stafford led the league in interceptions last year. He won the Super Bowl. Yeah. So this isn't the crisis that people are acting like it is. And the Bengals still had 2 chances in the fourth quarter to go down and do something. So it didn't really matter. I think the Bengals will be disappointed, because it was there. It was on the table. It was sitting there for them. I thought that a big part of the game two things about the game that nobody's going to talk about, that most people aren't going to talk about, that were really big. The end of the first half and the beginning of the second half. The Bengals completely flipped the game right there. When the Chiefs, they had the ball at the end of the near the end of the first half, okay, with 2:20. It was like 2 minutes and 22 seconds or something like that. They threw the ball 3 times instead of running it to try to get rid of some of the clock, which allowed Cincinnati to get the ball and then go down the field. And they got a field goal. They're lucky that the Bengals didn't get a touchdown right there. And then at the end of the game, the Bengals not kicking or punting the ball out of bounds. So because of that return, that's what set up the drive. By the way, I hate to point this. I know people don't want to hear this. In the fourth quarter, neither team could do anything. Neither
Yeah.
offense was moving the ball at all. So if that guy punts that ball out of bounds, I doubt Kansas City was having trouble getting any yards. Okay, so I don't think they would have gotten down the field to get a field goal. I think that game goes into overtime. But that's really the issue. And now forget the penalty on the kick, pushing him out of bounds. I know everybody's going to that like that's that's decided the game. It did not decide the game. Okay, that punt, not kicking the ball straight to the guy and not kicking out of bounds, that really cost them. That's what sets up the whole drive. So, I thought those two things were really important. Once the Bengals had flipped the game at the end of the first half, that allowed them to stay in it. And so these things that coaches continually screw up, and by the way, you want to talk about broadcasters, this is what they need to do a better job of, explaining those things in the game so that we understand what's happening. But they don't. They didn't explain what the way Kansas City completely mismanaged the clock at the end of the first half, which allowed Cincinnati to get the ball back, which never should have happened. And Andy Reid has been bad at this forever and gets away with it. So, there's other things inside the game that help decide the game. One of my other big takeaway from the game is what people miss about football and what has become basically what I think is the most important thing is you have to protect your quarterback. I know the Bengals had injuries on their offensive line. I get it. But on the most important play of the game, on 3rd and 8, you don't have a running back help chip on Chris Jones. You don't max protect when you have to get a first down, when the game's on the line. Like I thought Cincinnati made some nice adjustments from the first quarter to the second quarter.
Yeah.
But then they didn't keep it up the rest of the game. And this is where I would criticize the Bengals coach. I just thought I thought he could have done a better job in the critical plays in the game with that. I just had a couple things. So look, I think that game yesterday kind of proved to me, like, if you're sitting there in the AFC and you don't have a special quarterback, I don't know what you're doing. Like to any Dolphins fans that think, Tua is the answer, like if you watch that game, I'm sorry, we're not anywhere close to that.
Yeah.
Apparently Clark's dogs disagree.
On Facebook, I saw something on Facebook yesterday that was like, Tua's better than Herbert and Burrow, and they show like their records or something. I'm just like, oh God, dude, you just don't get it.
Yeah, it's just really disturbing. Like you're not beating that. Like, get out of here. Like, our quarterback's not standing a chance against that. So I think that it kind of gives, as Colin Cowherd would say, it kind of gives you clarity. Like, look, man, you're going to have to move. Like, this is not a long-term solution. I think we should, we'll talk about the referees for a second here. Look, the referees did not cost them the game. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, I don't understand. Like, I'm reading articles where the referees were awful yesterday. Okay, where's the egregious call that cost the team the game? Where is it? Oh, they called pass interference where the guy grabbed him. Okay.
Yeah, that was close, but I mean, yeah, that's interference. I don't know what you want.
Right. So it was interference. So the referees screwed up that 3rd down where they gave the Chiefs another play. That was bad, but it didn't cost anybody. Like,
right.
What are the egregious calls that we missed in this game? Like, I don't understand. Like, the officiating was fine. Like, listen, I'm not thrilled with it a lot of the times. The one criticism I will listen to, though, is that these calls, the calls that they made in the games yesterday, were not calls that they were making in the previous 2 rounds. I don't know.
Yeah.
You could say they were letting them play earlier and now they're not. You could, but I just think the referee stuff is nonsense.
Yeah. It usually is. It's just it's one of the most annoying things about sports, sports analysis, that people just constantly fall into that, and it's a waste of time. So,
yeah. So, all right. So we'll go into previewing the Super Bowl. I mean, look, watching that Eagles 49ers game, it's just, I just don't know what kind of things you can take away from it. I mean, the only things, like, I think it's a big deal that the Eagles were able to run the ball on the 49ers. I think that matters. You can run the ball like they did against a good defense. I think that's a big deal, especially when they know you're going to do it. I don't think I mean, Jalen Hurts is not 100%. You can tell. And it's a little different than Mahomes because Hurts' injury does affect him throwing the ball directly because it's his throwing shoulder.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. He didn't really have to do very much yesterday. And I know people are going, I don't want to go so far as, I'm not making the argument that, well, the Eagles haven't been tested and they haven't played. I mean, look, the Eagles really haven't played any great quarterbacks. When they played the Cowboys, the first game, Cooper Rush was out. When they played him the second time, Jalen Hurts was out. So you look at their schedule and it's kind of disturbing. It's kind of like, wow, boy, they really didn't have to deal with anything like that. I don't think that's a reason to be overly concerned because Philadelphia is so good on both sides of the ball. They have so much talent. I mean, they're bringing in Ndamukong Suh and Brandon Graham off the bench for their defensive line.
Yeah.
It's insane. So I guess my questions going into it, is Jalen Hurts going to be able to throw the ball consistently? Because I feel like they're going to need some big plays because I think it's going to be hard. We'll see how it is in a dome. Maybe it'll be easier for the offenses, but I still think it's going to be hard to consistently move the ball down the field. Maybe easier for the Eagles because they can run it.
Right.
But I think that's going to be difficult.
Yeah, I think I was at first I was leaning Eagles, but now I think I'm leaning Chiefs just because the Eagles haven't really been tested that much, so I kind of think Mahomes will figure something out. But yeah, it'll probably be a close game. I don't see why it wouldn't be a close game. I just don't think that because you've seen the Chiefs, like they don't, they have Travis Kelce, but they don't have. They got rid of Tyreek Hill. They don't really have anyone who scares you. Mahomes can make some stuff happen. He can throw some guys open, but it's not, and then the Eagles, like you said, Jalen Hurts' shoulder is, not right. So I just don't know, can he make enough throws? Yeah, it's, I think it'll be a close game. I guess I'm going to lean Chiefs just because they have Mahomes. So I think that they can probably figure it out. And the Chiefs defense, they're pretty good. They're not as good as the Eagles, but I think they're good enough. We'll see how they match up if Hurts is running around a lot, and if he can make some throws, and maybe that gives the Chiefs some problems.
Yeah, I think I think the Eagles have in the trenches the Eagles are going to have an advantage, and I think that if their defensive line does what they did yesterday, they can make it really hard. They can turn this into a slugfest and give them a chance to win. But the only problem for Philadelphia is I think they really have to have the lead. They've got to play from in front. They've got to start fast, and they got to get ahead of them to keep the game, within their control. But who knows? It could be a game where in the second half, the offenses start to get a little more traction. So I feel like things I wrote down. I feel like Philadelphia's got to get to at least 24 points. I feel like if you're hanging around under 20 points, like the Chiefs will eventually beat you, like they showed yesterday. I think it's going to come down to quarterback making some big throws down the field because I just think it's going to be hard to consistently drive the ball, especially for Kansas City. I just think it's going to be hard against that defense to consistently do because, Philadelphia's rotating all these really good defensive linemen into the game. They're just loaded. So it's going to be really hard and the Chiefs were struggling to block Cincinnati yesterday. So it's going to be a challenge to handle.
That's one of the things that I think would concern you as a Chiefs fan because, if the Eagles can kind of dominate up front, then they can win the game.
And you saw what Philadelphia's offensive line did. They were hammering people. So that's going to be a tough deal. So, but the other thing is the Jalen Hurts running the ball. That is a big time weapon, and the Chiefs have not really had to deal with anybody like that this year. So that's going to be different for them when you have to cover the quarterback. You have to defend him from running. That changes the thing. So I tend to agree with you. I tend to think Mahomes figures it out at some point in the second half. But listen, we saw what Tampa did to him in the Super Bowl, and I'm not putting it out of the realm of possibility.
Well,
that the Eagles
I think
could
a lot
do
of
the
that
same
was
thing.
their offensive line was a mess, and Kansas City's offensive line now I think is really good. So, well, it's really good at pass protecting. They don't. I mean, maybe they'd be better at running the ball if they actually tried to run it. But Andy Reid doesn't like to run the ball that much. So,
and yeah, I think it's going to be tough. I think if you limit Travis Kelce and you make the other guys beat you, it's tough. And it was tough for Kansas City yesterday, and that was against Cincinnati's defense, and Philadelphia's defense is the next level up. So yeah, I do think this is a really competitive game. Right now, the Eagles are like a 1.5 or 2 point favorite, which I find interesting. But yeah, no. Listen, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be a really fun game, and I think we got the right teams in there. I'm glad that I'm glad that it didn't. It's probably better that it didn't go the other way. As far as San Francisco goes, look, it's unfortunate that happened to them. I wonder though, like I was texting with you guys, I wonder if Shanahan walks into the office and is like, "All right, get me a freaking quarterback. Enough of this." So I wonder how that goes and what they're going to do, because now it's like, and now I'm reading that Brock Purdy's going to not be able to play football for 6 months because of his elbow.
Oh wow!
So he might need surgery. We'll see if he needs surgery. Then obviously he's not playing next year. But yeah, that's gonna be really interesting.
All
right. Well, so at this point we're both going with the Chiefs. But listen, man, don't sleep on the Eagles.
Okay,
they're pretty legit.
All right.
All right, folks.